I get paid what I get paid because I'm worth it. That's as simple as it is. It's like people say, oh, what's your fee for this service, or it is this. And I'll tell you why it's that. It's because it's worth it. Having experience on both the landlord side and the investor side and the operating company side and multiple industries, right? So we're in real estate, yes. We're also in tech. We're also in medical. We're in the beverage business. So it's like we're in these other businesses where it's like the skill sets that you acquire in running teams and management of projects is really what ultimately will translate into other industries.
Hey everyone, I am so excited to have Joel Moyes on the show today. Joel Moyes is the co-owner of Realty Executives and Red Brick Property Management. With over 2 decades of leadership in real estate, Joel has been driving force behind Realty Executives, known for his integrity, innovation, and results-driven approach. His background in commercial real estate brokerage and business development has helped propel the company to new heights, empowering both seasonal professionals and aspiring agents. Beyond real estate, Joel is committed to community engagement and philanthropy, reflecting his dedication to corporate responsibility. His strategic vision continues to shape Realty Executives and Red Brick Property Management. Joel, thank you so much for being on the show. Welcome.
Thanks, Pam. I'm super stoked to be here. I appreciate you. Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Before we dive in, let me just share with our audience that if you're a business owner who needs to better understand your financials and you want to know your numbers, increase your profit, reduce your taxes, and grow your wealth, that's what Pivot Business Group is here to do. So if you're looking for bookkeeping services, fractional CFO services, tax strategy, or tax filing, and you're doing at least $500,000 in revenue, I'd love for you to go to pamjordan.com and book a call. All right, Joel, are you ready?
I'm ready to roll.
All right, perfect. So you've been in the real estate space for a long time, but I want you to help me go back. Tell me what you wanted to be when you grew up.
Oh, that's a great question. I actually thought I wanted to be a pilot when I grew up. Military kid, grew up all over the world, and spent a lot of time on military bases growing up as a kid, and just loved seeing the jets and big planes flying around. And so, when I was younger, I was like, you know what? I think that would be very, very interesting. I'm the only kid in my family that didn't go into the military except for my sister. So
Okay.
a big military family background, and surprisingly just went to college instead and took a different career path, but came back to aviation later in life. And we could talk about that later.
Yeah, I see we're working on our pilot's license. And so I will touch on that. That's something that's near and dear to me. So military background from family, but what was your actual first paying job? How did Joel make his first dollar?
Great question. So lawn mowing business, my own lawn mowing business was the first paying job, so to speak. I mean, I think I did some odd babysitting and things like that when I was younger, but ultimately I was like, I think it was when I was 12, I said, I need to start making a little bit of dough. We lived in San Antonio and we started mowing lawns in the neighborhood. Eventually got to the point where I'm like, there's only one of me and only, one or so. So I ended up acquiring a couple more mowers, recruiting friends. And at one point, I think I had six lawn mowers and 5 other buddies mowing. And then in the winter, when things got cold and the grass didn't grow as fast in San Antonio, my brother and I would climb oak trees and clip off mistletoe and put it in little plastic baggies and put red and green ribbon on them. And then we'd sell those door to door for, between $3 to $5 a pop. And that was a pretty good gig too. So
you've
always,
been a
always
hustler,
entrepreneurial.
hustler for a long time.
Always hustling. Yeah.
I love that. So what were you taught about money as a kid, and how did having your own lawn management company and mistletoe company, how did that define how you understood money back then?
Yeah, I wasn't taught a lot about money. My parents are potato farmers from Twin Falls, Idaho, and my father joined the military, married my mom when they were 18, left and went into his service in the Air Force when they were 22, and didn't really know much about money. So it wasn't really a thing that we talked about in my family growing up. And so everything I've learned about money, other than, the typical stuff that parents teach you, like, hey, make sure you save and, save, live within your means and work hard. I mean, the greatest thing my dad gave me was my work ethic, I think. And that was just like, hey, you just never quit. But not a lot on financial management, not about the game of money. I had to learn a lot of that later in life. I'm the first Moyes in my bloodline, direct bloodline, to go to college. So even just figuring out how to go to school and how to get the funds for school, I worked 3 jobs as I was going through college. Um, I will say that I learned young on the lawn mowing side that your labor can only be traded for so much. Like, so as a kid, I recognized like, hey, there's only one of me and one mower, and I can only make so much if it's just me and one mower. So it's like, multiple levels of business you learn later in life. It's like, okay, you're trading labor, then you're trading, maybe management skills next, and then maybe you're trading brain power, but then you're starting to learn how to make money work for you and grow it from there. So it taught me at a young age that I didn't want to be a laborer and that I wanted to use my brain instead of my hands necessarily. I'm not afraid to roll my sleeves up and do the hard work. But one thing that I taught my daughter that I learned along the way was we never paid for chores. I always got paid for chores as a kid in my family. And I kind of changed that dynamic with my daughter. And it was like, I'm not going to pay you to teach you that your physical labor is of high value.
Yeah.
Instead, I pay her to read. I pay her to read books when she was younger. So it was like $5 or $10 for every book that she would bring back to me and be able to tell me what she read. So I think that was probably some of the first financial lessons that I've learned.
That's awesome. It's crazy how what you learned from your dad, the work ethic, and how you turned that in to motivate your daughter differently. And your daughter's in college now. Congratulations. You've made
Yes, thank
it.
you very much. Getting a finance degree and a real estate degree up at Northern Arizona University up in Flagstaff. So
I wonder where that motivation came from. Weird.
yeah, very weird.
So, Joel, tell me about your first major milestone beyond the lawn mowing when we were a kid and the hustling. When you were out of college, you were out there. What was the first, like, oh, wow, I did it? What did that tell me about that moment?
Yeah, I think it was my first. Well, there's probably two that I could talk about. Certainly graduating from school was a big deal for me and my family. It was like, hey, it can be done. I think it showed my little sister, who eventually got her 4-year degree, that it can be done. And my dad eventually actually got his 4-year degree. Later in life, he and I were motivating each other and trying to figure out who was going to graduate first. So that was a big milestone for our family that we kind of flipped the script, I think, from a generational perspective on education in general, making it a priority, number one. And then number two, I think it was probably my first 6-figure commission. Like, I got my degree in commercial real estate. I started working as a young broker. I left a job at JP Morgan Chase and went into commercial real estate. I left a job that was paying me like 50 grand a year at the time, which was a lot of money for a college kid, and went into a job in my first year in commercial real estate. I think I made $14,000. And so my first check was a big deal, but it was $700. But my first 6-figure check was one where it was like, okay, this is something that I'm good at. It's something that I can replicate. And it was like, okay, there's real money to be made here if you just focus and grow the portfolio and keep your head down and continue to work hard. So, and then my first 7-figure check was probably the big one where it was like, oh, once you do one, people say, oh, you're a millionaire, whatever it is. It's like, you're really not until you're earning $1 million a year, in my opinion. But that first 7-figure check deposited into your checking account, it was in the early 2000s, and it was like more money than I had ever seen. And it was like, okay, I know that I can do this now. I'm good at it. And between my partner, Jeff Hawk, and I, we were like, okay, this is replicatable. We can go out and we can do this again and again and again.
So that was the time for money wasn't the way to go. It was all about the putting your head down. So why commercial real estate? There's lots of ways to make money. Real estate investing, brokerage, all of that. There's so many options. Why did you hone in on commercial real estate?
It was the influence of my mentor, which was Jeff Hawk, he's my fraternity brother. He's my best friend. He's my business partner for now going on 25 years. And it was really at his encouragement while I was in school. I was going to get a degree in business management and a minor in Japanese. I speak Japanese, I speak Spanish. And I was thinking I would utilize that to maybe, I don't know, go to Hawaii and sell real estate. I really didn't have a firm plan. And he said, hey man, you're a great salesman. He's like, there's uncapped income potential in commercial real estate. And the more I researched it, the more I started to fall in love with the idea that, you can run your own business within a business. You can grow your income and grow eventually wealth. And I love the number side of it. Like there's a science to the commercial side that is not evident in the residential side. I think those transactions are more emotional as opposed to on the commercial side where you're buying a 20 or a $30 million shopping center, and you need to be a professional in understanding the lease and the value and, all of the entitlements and everything else that goes into underwriting the risk of that type of asset. I was really drawn to the technical side of the commercial real estate business. And within that business, I focused on retail, and it was shopping centers and build to suits and things like that. So when people ask me, oh, what kind of real estate should I go into? And I'm like, well, there's a million different categories. It's like, what should I eat? Right. It's, real estate is food, but what do you like within the category? So there's a lot of different ways that you can go. And then once we understood the finances and the underwriting on the shopping center side and how to build teams, and it kind of grew into its own animal with these other companies now that we own.
And so what I'm hearing you say is that the commercial real estate was really more data driven and more numbers driven and less emotional, because you're right. A lot of the flippers, there's a lot of emotion into buying this house and convincing the person to sell it and all that, because it was their grandma's house and that was their, kitchen table that grandma cooked at and all of that. I love it. So when you're talking to young real estate professionals coming in, what advice are you telling them around the money piece of it rather than the emotional piece?
Sure. I think there is a mindset shift that has to occur with people with respect to money. And if you have a lack, if you don't have an abundance mindset relative to money, you're going to struggle with it. And so if you think that it's finite and you don't think that there's abundance in the universe, in my opinion, you're going to struggle with it. So my advice to them is learn. It's kind of like aviation. It's like you learn how to fly, then you learn how to buy, and then you learn how to own, and then you learn how to upgrade. It's the same thing in real estate. The first thing I kind of qualify people first. It's like, well, go get your real estate license. That's literally the first thing I tell them. And if they're not willing to do that, in my opinion, it's not simple, but if they're not willing to do that first kind of bar, then they're probably not going to be cut out for the business in general. So the first thing I do is I say, hey, if you're interested in it, the first thing you need to do is go get your real estate license. If they come back to me at that point and they say, hey, I've got my license, I'm ready to learn, they've already shown me that they have an aptitude for being a self-starter, going to and accomplishing a long-term goal, getting over a certain bar that's been set in the industry. Now, that's not the end all be all, and that's really just the license to learn. But it sets the stage for the amount of work that's going to be needed to go into the business. So, and then it's a matter of finding out, okay, what interests you? Is it retail? Is it residential flips? Is it industrial buildings? Is it multifamily? Is it special use? I mean, I have a friend that has sold 87% of the mini storages in Arizona for the past 20 years. He's just
fantastic.
He found a niche, and he is the guy when it comes to mini storages. So it's about finding what interests you and what speaks to you, and then really, really, really becoming an expert in that, because people will pay for expertise, whatever you're selling.
No, I agree 100%. So how have you and Jeff, as you've grown these businesses and grown your portfolio, found the balance between growth and profitability?
Well, I think it's always a work in progress. And I will say that diversification is not just a buzzword. It is an absolute necessity in life. However, until you're really, really good at one thing, you really shouldn't try and branch out and do a bunch of other things. So, we became experts in shopping centers. We acquired millions of square feet of retail throughout the West and in the Western states. And that foundation gave us the ability to kind of tinker in the sandbox a little bit and experiment with other businesses and other investments. The balance comes from, I think personally, knowing when to say no, because once you get to a certain point, you've got capital, you've got cash flow, you have a good reputation, hopefully, because you treat people well. You've grown businesses, you've grown teams, you've managed people. You get a lot of opportunities thrown at you. You get people bringing you deals, bringing you businesses, bringing you all kinds of stuff all the time. And I think no is my second favorite answer, is what I tell people. Yeses are great, but nos are equally as good if you're focused on what it is that you're good at. So it's not what you know, and it's not what you don't know. It's what you don't know that gets you. So I always say, admit that you have blind spots in life and in business, and be really careful about the decisions that you make as you go into a new business, especially. So my advice is build a foundation first, create a passive machine that creates cash flow. And then you can kind of branch out and experiment in other businesses before you start trying to become a jack of all trades.
I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs that we work with come to us and they're just doing too many things. They're trying to have too many businesses, too many products, too many services, and they're just not making money at any of them. And it's like, focus on one thing, make sure that that is up and running and that machine's printing money, and then go do something else. Far too often, a lot of entrepreneurs are chasing the squirrel ideas, right? Like Joel, you and I know a lot of guys who are just like, oh, this opportunity, this opportunity, this opportunity. And they just run after all the shiny objects. And it's like, dude, make money at one thing first.
Yeah. Some advice that I give young people, it's like diluted focus will give you diluted results. Like if you dilute your focus, it's only natural that you can only be so good at so many things. So be really, really careful about what you spend your time on. And it's okay to say no. If someone brings you a deal, it's like, let me get really good at this first. Let me make sure this is something that can run itself, and try and make yourself obsolete, right? Run a team and run a business to the point where you make yourself, if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, this company's not going anywhere. It's got systems and processes in place. Same thing with Realty executives, same thing with the kinetic businesses. I hope I'll be missed, but the businesses won't stop.
Yeah, they can run without you. So that's a great segue into, how do you ensure your team aligns with the company's financial goals? You say operationally they're solid, but what about the financial goals? How do you make sure that they're bought in?
I think it comes down to a couple of key things, and it's hiring first, making sure that you're hiring people that can see the vision of the company in a similar manner. They're never going to have the same vision that you have, and they're never going to probably work as hard as you work. But hiring people who philosophically are self-starters and don't need to be micromanaged, are complex problem solvers. You can give them a problem. You don't tell them how to solve it. You just give them the problem, and they come back to you with solutions. So part of our mantra at our companies is like, you never come into a meeting with a problem without at least one potential solution. I don't pay you to take orders. I pay you to tell me what to do. Like, I want to be in a room with really, really smart people that are helping me grow. So hiring smart people that are complex problem solvers is number one. And then aligning incentives relative to the businesses around those are the second thing. And that's probably the hardest part of the puzzle, making sure that you're not giving away the company, but at the same time rewarding people, and they can see their path and paint a picture for them in your reviews with them, that they know what's next for them, and what next may not always be with you. And that's okay as an owner, right? Your goal is to help people grow. And if you can help make people successful in their careers, byproduct will be your success. Yeah. So treat people well, help them grow, help them, constant communication with your employees and with your staff. And by the way, you should have a very limited number of people that report directly to you. Like we have, at Realty Executives, we have 700 something agents and do over $2 billion a year in sales, but I only have 4 people that report to me. And that's because they have people that are on their teams that they run. And I don't need to get into the weeds. I need them to be in the weeds, and I need their people to be in the weeds. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
no, it does. And it helps you and your team be in alignment of what you're building, and making sure that your vision's clear, and making sure that they're incentivized based on achieving those visions. I see entrepreneurs who are scattered and their team is scattered. And so if everyone's driving, rowing in the same direction, then you can help get there.
And they got to feel the wins. When your company has a win, your people have to feel a win. Speaking of win, I was speaking to Steve Wynn at one point at his casino in Las Vegas. And he said, look, when someone does something right, it needs to feel wonderful immediately and be very public. So like, we're big on recognition, and it's not about pizza parties and like patting people on the back. It's like, hey, you're going to get a massive raise this year because we are seeing you directly contribute to the growth of the company and the bottom line. I'm not afraid of giving someone a 40% raise if they're crushing it, And the reason I do that is for a number of reasons. Number one, it's worth it, right? You don't do it if it's not worth it. And number two, it makes them sticky. They want to stay. They like working there. They feel valued and honored. And that's fun to be able to do. But if the company's not profitable, it's hard to do. So, there's a balance there.
Yeah, and that's the balance between the growth and the profitability.
Mhm.
So, what financial habits have you put in place with your partner, Jeff, to sustain profitable growth so that as you're getting more square foot, at getting more agents, that you're making sure that your margins are where you want them to be?
Well, you said it earlier in the introduction, and it's like knowing your numbers. You really do need to be an expert on your KPIs. You need to understand. So every business has, customer acquisition cost, a customer value, so to speak. Now, the relationships you can't put a number on, but certainly when I bring on a new door or a new client or a new portfolio on the property management side, I can tell you with precision what it cost me to get that business and what it's worth to the bottom line from an EBITDA perspective and from a monthly cash flow perspective. So I think having a very clear, like for one of our companies, we do a 13-week projection for cash flow. And so I can look at the number of new escrows that are coming into the company, and I can say with almost certainty what the output or the throughput will be 13 weeks from now, given what I know about my fixed costs and what I know about my variable expenses. So,
My little
knowing your
CFO heart is
numbers.
so happy.
Yeah. And I don't think a lot of business owners, I mean, I certainly think that having some financial training in school, they teach you how to read a balance sheet, they teach you what an income statement is. They understanding those just even at a very basic level as a non-accountant, it is tremendously valuable in
Yeah.
your business, because if you don't know where your leakage is, you can't fix it. You don't even know where to look. You're going to start cutting in areas that will cut potential growth as opposed to cutting fat or unneeded expenses.
So, where were you in your entrepreneurial journey when someone sat down and explained what a profit and loss was and what a balance sheet was to you?
It started with financial classes in college. And in the real estate program that I went through, we did a lot of cash flow modeling and regression analysis, very technical financial analysis on assets. So you would review an asset, they'd hand you a stack of financials and they'd say, should we buy this? And so your job was to come up with a green light or a red light, essentially. And that type of training, that critical thinking, I think was invaluable. I think as you grow a business, you're kind of learning it as you go, what your chart of account is going to look like and what your financials are going to look like. As you acquire companies, I think that's the first time really when you're starting to acquire another operating company, not just a real estate asset. That's a very different thing. But when you're starting to acquire a company that has employees, payroll and fixed assets and depreciation schedules and whatnot, you're really now starting to understand, or you should have an understanding of what you're about to buy. And if you don't, you probably shouldn't buy it. So I'm not going to sit here and say that it was perfect the first time we bought a company. We learned a lot of hard lessons, but you get better over time. And you can bring in experts and counsel that can help you analyze historical cash flow statements and analyze, the balance sheet, et cetera. I mean, I'm still learning every day.
Yeah.
It's like, we got an item that comes in and I'm like, well, that should produce cash. Nope, it's a balance sheet item. So one of the things I will say is spend money on your counsel when it comes to both lawyers and accountants and CPAs. So Pam, your firm does a phenomenal job of taking a holistic view, and the idea that most people struggle with, especially if they're a smaller business. It's like, how do I get really good advice without being able to afford maybe a full-time CFO? And that's where, Pam and her team with fractional CFOs and some of these other solutions that are creative can really help, because you get the expertise without all the cost, which is important. And it's not about what you're spending. Oftentimes it's about what you're saving and about what you're growing relative to that expertise, not just about the individual dollars on that particular quarterly cash flow statement.
Absolutely. I agree. And that's why, as fractional CFOs and tax strategists and bookkeepers, it's so easy for us to show our value in black and white to our clients, because the before and after is clear. Our ROI is amazing. And it's the same, I'm sure, when people come into your portfolio with their properties. It's like, look, this is what you were cash flowing from that.
Yeah.
Now, 18 months in, look how much you're bringing in because we're helping you manage it. We've, fixed it up and done all that. I love that. I love
And
that.
people, when people ask you about your pricing or about your fee, you better have a clear understanding of your value proposition. I get paid what I get paid because I'm worth it. That's as simple as it is. It's like people say, oh, what's your fee for this service, or it is this. And I'll tell you why it's that. It's because it's worth it. A lot of times it's the same thing with the investor. They don't know what they're leaving on the table because they haven't really had an expert tell them what their property could rent for, or what their, in terms of a shopping center, maybe you're leaving a lot of money on the table because you're getting bad advice on what your anchor space, your largest space, should lease for. And so having experience on both the landlord side and the investor side and the operating company side and multiple industries, right? So we're in real estate, yes. We're also in tech. We're also in medical. We're in the beverage business. So it's like we're in these other businesses where it's like the skill sets that you acquire in running teams and management of projects is really what ultimately will translate into other industries.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So let's talk about that pilot's license.
Yeah.
So now I know that your goal, your dream as a kid was to be a pilot. So now it's coming full circle. So what does that look like? I love that.
So COVID hit, and we bought, I think I bought 100 laptops that day, my partner and I, and sent all our staff home and closed our offices for a while. It was that day where I decided, okay, I'm going to go. It's always been a lifelong dream to have the license. So I went and I got licensed. I was licensed in like 5 months. So fast forward to this past year, I've been focused this last year on getting my instrument rating, which I finally got my instrument rating in January of this past year, which was I would say it's at least twice as hard to get your instrument rating as it is to get your private pilot license.
Okay.
And that'll give me the ability to kind of slowly grow the category and type of plane that I can fly around the West. And it'll help serve our needs and our businesses as well. There's no real way to justify private aviation, no matter what anybody tells you. But if you're going to fly privately, it's nice. I love to fly, so I personally like to fly the plane. And it's helped a lot with family stuff, getting back and forth to San Antonio and seeing my daughter in Flagstaff. It's a 30-minute flight from my little airport down here in Phoenix. So it's been great. It's been wonderful.
I love it. Planes are good for tax strategy, by the way.
Yes, they
Hopefully
are.
you're taking advantage of all of that.
Yeah.
We have a couple clients that recent in the past couple of years got planes because it was like, look, you've got all this cash. You travel a whole lot.
You're either going to give it to the IRS or you're going to get 100% bonus depreciation if you do it right,
Right. And you can fly in your own plane. So one day bucket list is a plane. I don't want to fly it though, Joel. So you can just fly me around. How's that? Sound good?
That sounds great. We're happy to do that. Maybe I'll start a little charter business too.
I love it. So besides the pilot's license, what's next for Joel? What's the next thing that you're working on?
Well, Jeff, my business partner who's not on the podcast today, is heavily focused on growing our beverage business. So we acquired a tequila brand that has been around since the recipe's been around since the 1800s. And like any business and any partnership, you've got to really focus on dividing and conquering and separation of powers and duties, so to speak. So Jeff is the CEO of that company and is running it and is really the full-time. I own an interest in the company and I'm on the board and I'm helping it grow. But Jeff is focused on that. That's one venture. We also are partners in an app that's going to be launching in the firearms space, which is very different, a departure from some of the other things that we've done, which we're excited about. Not quite ready to release it yet, but it's been a couple years in development. So we sold a company last year, America's Health Centers, which has now grown into its own animal. Jeff and I were involved in that for several years and grew that. It's kind of like short-term turnkey medical office space, like the Regis for doctors. So we grew that concept and sold it. And I don't know. I mean, it's nice to have the foundation of these companies that are profitable, that are cash flowing. I don't know that I see myself being an operator of a large residential real estate company forever. But, lots of opportunity in the marketplace as AI takes hold and changes things, both on the title business. So we own a title company. We own a mortgage JV. We have a bunch of companies that support the larger company. I can certainly see disruption in those markets. And I see there's a potential opportunity for us to either grow them or exit them over the next 5 years. I will say I'm 47 now. By the time I'm 50, I want to work at a slightly different pace. So I think exiting some of these companies at some point is in the cards. What that looks like, I don't know. I don't know yet, but I know I'm supposed to have a better exit plan, but I'm still having fun.
Well, if you wake up every morning and love what you do, it's kind of hard to make an exit plan.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So I've got some rapid fire questions for you. So just answer them. There's no explanation. Just give me what you got. You ready?
Perfect.
Profit or growth?
Profit.
What's one business expense you'll never cut no matter what?
Legal.
Legal. I love that. What's the best money advice you've ever received?
Try and get to the point where you can live on 3% of what you make.
I love it. If you had to start over today, what's the one thing you do differently with your finances?
I would have set up a bunch of investment accounts at a much younger age, tax-free investment accounts at a much younger age. And I would have bought a lot more whole life insurance.
I agree. But what does financial freedom mean to Joel?
Having a very peaceful relationship with money and not having to worry about it or having it to make decisions in your life on your behalf. You have, I wouldn't say control, but you have a peaceful relationship with money.
I love that. I love that. Joel, thank you so much for sharing your profit story with us. How can people connect with you?
Red Brick Realty is our property management company. We manage between the two companies about 1,800 doors in the Phoenix area. Rentredbrick.com is our website. That's rentredbrick.com. That's probably the easiest way. Or you can find me on LinkedIn, which is just LinkedIn/Joel Moyes.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on this show. That's all for Pivot to Profit today. If you'd like to better understand your numbers, increase your profit, and reduce your taxes, just go to pamjordan.com to learn more. And remember, it's not what you make that matters, it's what you keep.